Grace Wisher, the forgotten girl behind the Star-Spangled Banner. History books often tell us that one woman, Mary Pickersgill, sewed the great Star-Spangled Banner, flag that flew over Fort McHenry in 1814, the flag that inspired Francis Scott Key to write the words that became America's national anthem. But in truth, the making of that flag was not the work of one woman's hands alone. Among the team who stitched together its massive stripes and stars was a 13-year-old African-American girl named Grace Wisher, and for nearly 2 centuries, her name was almost completely erased from the nation's memory. Grace Wisher was born around the year 1800 in Baltimore, Maryland, a city where slavery was still legal, but where a growing number of free black people lived and worked. Grace's mother was a free black woman, which meant Grace was also legally free. Still, freedom in early 19th century Baltimore didn't mean equality. Opportunities for education were rare, and most black children learned trades through apprenticeships. At the age of 13, Grace was bound as an indentured apprentice to Mary Pickersgill, a widowed white seamstress known for making flags, ships' colors, and military standards. Grace's apprenticeship would last 6 years, during which she would live in Pickersgill's household, learn sewing skills, and help with her business in exchange for room, board, and instruction. For a black girl in 1813, it was one of the few ways to acquire a skilled trade, but it was also a life of hard work and strict rules. In the summer of 1813, Mary Pickersgill received a large commission from Major George Armistead, the commander of Fort McHenry in Baltimore Harbor. He wanted a flag so large that the British will have no difficulty seeing it from a distance. The order called for a flag that would measure an enormous 30 feet by 40 feet, with 15 stars and 15 stripes, one for each state and each star then in the Union. Sewing such a flag was no small task. The work required yards upon yards of heavy wool bunting, thick linen thread, and long days of cutting, measuring, and hand-stitching. Pickersgill, her daughter Carolyn, her nieces, and her elderly mother all joined in. But standing beside them was Grace Wisher, her small hands pulling long seams, her needle moving with precision through coarse fabric, and her eyes straining under candlelight. For weeks, the sewing went on, so intense that some of the work had to be done in a nearby brewery's malt house because the flag was too large to spread out inside the Pickersgill home. Grace and the others pieced together massive stripes, each 2 feet wide, and stitched giant stars nearly 2 feet from point to point. In 1814, when the War of 1812 reached Baltimore and the British Navy bombarded Fort McHenry, that very flag, the one Grace had helped sew, flew over the fort throughout the night and into the morning. The sight of it, still standing after the bombardment, inspired Francis Scott Key to write the poem that would become the Star-Spangled Banner. Grace, however, didn't see her name celebrated in any headlines. She didn't receive credit or public recognition. In fact, very little was recorded about her life at all. Like many African-American women of her time, her labor was essential but invisible to history. For almost 2 centuries, the story of the Star-Spangled Banner was told as the achievement of Mary Pickersgill alone. While Pickersgill's name rightly deserves honor, the omission of Grace Wisher's contribution tells us something important. America has often remembered its symbols, but forgotten the diverse hands that built them. It wasn't until modern historians began re-examining the flag's creation and digging into apprenticeship records in Baltimore that Grace's name resurfaced. In the indenture contract, she's described as a colored child apprenticed to Pickersgill, bound for 6 years. No diary entries or letters from Grace survive, and her life after her apprenticeship remains a mystery. But the simple fact of her recorded labor places her at the very heart of one of America's most iconic moments. Grace Wisher was not a politician, a general, or a songwriter. She was a teenage girl, free, but living in a deeply unequal society, who used her skill and her labor to help create the flag that would come to symbolize American resilience. Her story reminds us that behind every national symbol are the hands of ordinary people, many of whom history has ignored. In remembering Grace Wisher, we also acknowledge the countless unnamed Black women and girls whose work has shaped the United States. The flag that waved over Fort McHenry in 1814 was more than just stripes and stars. It was the product of a community's labor, stitched together by people from different backgrounds, races, and walks of life. Grace's hands helped sew America's anthem into existence. Her name should fly as high as the flag itself. History remembered the flag. It remembered the anthem. It remembered Mary Pickersgill. But it forgot Grace Wisher. No portraits, no headlines, no celebrations, just a name on an old apprenticeship record. A colored child, age 13, bound to learn the art of sewing. Grace's story is not just hers. It is the story of countless African American women and girls whose labor built the foundation of this country, often unseen, often uncredited, yet essential. The Star-Spangled Banner is more than fabric. It is threads pulled by hands of every background. Grace's hands, and though history nearly erased her, her name now flies alongside the flag she helped create.